Yeah, so, first, welcome to this discussion with Elana Katz in the gallery during her exhibition, Facts of Violence, and I want to introduce you our fantastic guests. Chiara, Valci, Mazzara is an international curator, and she gave us during the talk a kind of historical concept to performing art. On my right side is Marek Claaßen, founder of Artfacts.net, and he tells some words during the discussion about performing art in the art market. The artist, Elana Katz, will at the beginning explain us a bit about her works here in the installation. And yes.
Thank you. Thank you everybody for being here. Thank you guys for participating. Yes, so this is Facts of Violence is what you see in the exhibition are excerpts of a developing body of work that pertains to psychological, social, and physical violence, or physical violence, and very importantly, its aftermath. And I'm particularly interested in psychological violence because it's actually the most difficult to define and to distinguish where the borders are, actually, and where it starts and where it ends. And so for this reason, it's also the most difficult to defend. And so, if you guys maybe have the exhibition text, there's a quote from Freud, and it's really about this, Wiederholungszwang, he writes about, which is in English, I think it's repetitive compulsion, or repetitive compulsion, which is when repetition replaces memory, which is actually the subtitle of the exhibition title. And this is really a way that I understand my work to be actually an interesting way of seeing the works of this show, is looking at, in terms of violence, instances of violence and its consequences in terms of memory, and then how it can happen that when memory is erased or absent, for a variety of reasons, maybe disassociation, maybe because it was experienced at a time when one is too young to remember, or maybe because it's a sort of inherited post-memory that comes from a different generation or from another, but how a person can reproduce the memory as an action rather than a conscious memory. And so with this actually is where the title of the exhibition comes from. The F is in the brackets because an act of violence can be understood as a fact of violence as far as one believes in facts. Because according to Freud in this theory, we in society often yield to this compulsion to repeat rather than the compulsion to remember, or I would say actually the capacity to remember. And so, yes, this is very much what this body of work is based on. This, where memory is absent, its consequences in the form of repetition are present. And so, briefly, I will just say a few words about the works that are in the show. Running on Empty is a film that was being screened in this room that we had to sadly turn off because of space and, to have the talk. But this work, it took place in Serbia. It's a site-specific work. And I run the historic route of the gas stand, which was a gas chamber that was used inside of a van during the Holocaust for a short period in 1941. for the purpose of extermination in transit. And at the end, there was a mass grave. You know, so this was very unusual, actually, in the Holocaust, to have, you know, usually transport was a means to an end, and in this case, the transport itself, this landscape itself, is the place of the extermination. And so the way that I viewed this was really this, this extended geographical space, which is a landscape of trauma, and the topic of how to deal with this memory is, yeah, it's a very difficult one to answer, and one that I don't have an answer for.
Well, you run, so 15 kilometers?
So I run it.
Where's the
Yes. I run it without any training. It's meant to be really a shock to the body, and I wanted the audio of the breath was very important, especially as it deals with this history of suffocation. And so I have 2 microphones recording the breath. I have another microphone recording the muscles. And I worked with a film crew and ran 15 kilometers, also through the Autobahn and into the hills, like in the villages outside of the city. This was the work itself in public space, but in post-production, it became a different work. You know, I worked with a video editor in Berlin. We worked with these 3 images that are coming in and out of being visible at times that are unpredictable. And also the sound designer, who's here also tonight, is in this town. And we worked with all of this audio that comes actually from my own body, even though it sounds as though it sounds like, you know, many things, I don't know, extraterrestrial or mechanical or many things, but it's all coming actually from my own body, and it's developed in a way that is very conceptual also because it is mirroring the way that traumatic memory functions. And so the video work that's produced from this is really, it's like another work of its own. And then this one over here, Borders and Lines, this video is still on YouTube. It was around this time that I worked quite a lot in the Balkans, very interested in the topic of instances of erased history, looking at erased also collective memory, and working with very heavy histories of violence and conflict, and also in the region of former Yugoslavia, and finding myself in the midst of sort of quite present, current ethnic conflicts as well, and surrounded by these landscapes of trauma. And at some point I really started to feel as though my own body was a reflection of these landscapes of trauma, that it was itself one. And I had the drive to make this work, to cut a barcode into the chest with a razor blade, to treat the body as a canvas, to make the body into a landscape of trauma that is reflecting the geographical and the historical ones that were surrounding me. And I later came to this kind of understanding, actually quite a few years later, about lines, you know, analyzing, okay, what is this attraction that I have to lines aesthetically, with this barcode and with, in other ways as well. And I realized at some point that actually trauma is all about lines, because lines are borders and trauma occurs when borders are crossed. And so it was a very strong intuitive decision that I wanted to carve a barcode into my chest, but I didn't understand why. Until years later, then I understood that this turning the body into a landscape of trauma, to do so with lines of blood, is actually very, there's really intellectually a connection that can be made there. Am I talking too much? Or
No, that's
I don't know.
super.
I mean, I don't want to go too long.
No,
but
just short explain, you know.
Okay.
Everything's also the text, but I think it's wonderful to hear it from you also.
Yes. Just one more thing about this one. There's the postcard that's underneath is the only time, because it's a photograph, and it's the only time when you see the full chest. Thank you. When you see the full chest, because this video is shot in a way that's very fragmented. And on the back of it, there is barcode, because this is a limited edition postcard that we have. So it has the stamp of the gallery, and it looks as though the stamp is the barcode of the gallery, but it's not. It's actually the barcode that's carved into my chest. And so I like this little detail.
Use the stamp very often.
Yes, I really have a connection to this stamp. I love it.
That's my next gift.
Yeah, and then continuing over here, this work is connected. There's a documentation of the performance here on iPad. Marek is blocking it.
Yes. Come back when you're finished. So I can come all in.
Okay, I'll be quick. No, this is a work that is, it's very much about sexual violence, actually, and also protection. At the video, now you're blocking me. So the way that the performance begins is with opening the legs, and then I place one mirror directly in between the legs, and there's a wonderful moment in the video where you see the reflection of a man's face right there. It's not, it has. And then I continue to build a construction of mirrors and pieces of wood around the whole body. And the reason that I'm doing this is because it's in a number of cross-cultural practices that mirrors are used for protection, or they're considered to be protective, because if attention or energy that is undesired is coming in one direction, with the mirror it bounces away in the opposite direction, the same as light. The same as light. And so, well, I thought that this was quite a powerful idea, and so it's a 1 hour performance, again working with these timers. I like the kind of pressure of the audio of the timers. And I built this construction of mirrors and also pieces of metal and wood all around the body, also in a way that is sort of deforming the body a bit, making it look a bit robotic, I think, and in the end covering the face and until the timer is finished, and then leaving an installation also of the remaining mirrors that stayed in the exhibition. Which is something I like to work with quite a bit also, like with the pillows, is leaving the traces of the performance. And then what happens actually is that you have this body of work without the body of the artist, but then this body of work that remains, it has a meaning and it has a value because of the consciousness of the absence of the artist and what took place with the objects themselves. So again, this idea of presence and absence is something, that is, it's kind of everywhere with what I'm doing. And yes, the pillows, yes. So this is the, well now we're all watching the pillows. This is the most, I did this performance here, 2 weeks ago or something, and I conceptualized it for this exhibition. And there are videos documenting the piece online, but I'll also run you through it. The title is V, and the kind of statement that I have for it is that V is for victory, V is for violence, V is for the void that fills the space between. And so, yeah, the objects of the pillows, they're very, actually pillows are kind of appearing everywhere in works that I'm doing, I think, that in many different forms, but they're objects of home, and they're symbols of comfort, and they're symbols of safety and comfort. And then the iron is, I don't know, many people sort of associate it with something domestic or with femininity, which I don't at all. I associate it more with the danger of the iron and the heat and the branding and the burning, and also the shape that it leaves when it burns something has a violence to it. I think it's like a weapon, actually.
Yeah.
And
then you work on every single pillow for 20 minutes? Kind of.
Yeah, so with the first one, first they're on the wall and I take them off. With the first one, I put the iron there, put the timer for 15 minutes. And in this one, I'm very detached and removed and lying down and put the legs up the wall. The legs are sort of moving a bit, but also sort of often in this position of the V, which is where this statement about V is for victory, where it comes from. And this is, to me, a very morbid image of, that position referring to victory. So the burning there is without the involvement directly of my body. And then with this one, I come on top of the pillow and sit with the legs open in a V, and the iron comes here facing my body. This one is also a reference to sexual violence. And here again, the timer is put for 15 minutes. And then it's just a matter of waiting. It's this waiting and staying and being in the painful, uncomfortable situation, which I have put myself in, but it's all about repetition. So. And with the last one, then I lie down and position the iron here, and we share the pillow together. And for me, this one is very much about the idea of...
And the clock tells you to stop.
Yeah, the clock is always set for 15 minutes, and then there's always the ticking, creating the sort of uncomfortable atmosphere. And in the last one, it's really very much about this lying with the partner, but when I say partner, I mean sort of like the demon inside, it's sort of embracing of the demon inside, which I live or he lives or whatever it is, recognizing a partnership in that. And I think that in this last... in what happened here with this last pillow and the iron, there was a lot of intimacy also. And so that is the work. It remains with this installation. And I think that's enough, no?
Yeah, you have also the chance after ask her.
Questions? And Chiara, maybe you?
When I met Elana, I saw a few performances of her, and we met several times, and we spoke about her work. And what I thought immediately about 3 points, which to me are very, very close to the history of body art and performing art. The first point is her urgency to initiate a thought, to initiate a different point of view, and to suggest somehow of a cathartic moment in which is starting when she thinks about a work, and she sees it as a static image, and then she proceeds on giving the shape and form to her work and to her performances. And this is something that reminds me of the Julian Beck and Judith Polina in the Living Theatre, and their theatrical acts repeated, tailored and thought and conceived to go against the social rules or the social thinking, a thinking that we accept as it is. The second point that really impressed me is the use that Elana does of her body, that of course immediately recalls to the body art, to artists such as Gina Pane or Vito Conci, and the way she's using her body for example, in the work Lines and Borders, the way she's approaching the performing act in a different way from the past, in a different way from the beginning of the 60s and then the 70s, in which body art really has been accepted somehow in the art world, in the perception of this artistic tendency. And it's very peculiar how she never takes over her performance, never ever she takes over her concept. It's like the concept and the image and her work is developing through her pivotal body, a body that she uses as a map to witness and to be the tool through which you're acting, you're performing act. But you are not there to act, you are not there to take over your work, you are just using the body. And that recalls anthropological meanings, sociological meanings, but in a different way. Whereas in the past, in the 70s, the performing, the action and the body art was the mirror of a change in times in which the visual, the 2D perception of a work that was on the wall was still there, as it is now, but it was a rebellion, and there were a lot of artists that they were anti-market and they were refusing their performative art to be functional to any kind of production of actual work. Whereas in the case of Elana, she figured out, it's like that is coming, the media you will then use to represent your performance, to give birth to it and then to leave it out. And it's something that is not common. Back in the years, they were documenting the performance through photos, through videos, through sketches, even prints. And but then that was a documentation. There were documents. And whereas in the work of Elana, this ephemeral moment, this moment in time, this moment of work and of action is being done. It takes shape and takes body through video, for example, or through another body of work. Speaking of this work, for example, that's another example of how the work of Elana is various and how she's very free in the way in which she presents her work. So she doesn't stick to a media, but she lets the performance ask what is needed to be then in the work, right? So also in this case, she, starting from the concept about which she spoke before, she uses actually everyday material, common material. And through this material, she acts on her body. As she acts on her body in the video work, cutting on herself with the razor, but here she acts on her body, adding something on her body and changing the perception, the shape, the way you are occupying the space. So in this work, actually, this work speaks about the absence of her and speaks at the same time about the meaning of the performance and speaks at the same time is like a forgotten armor. She built on herself, changing her body, something with poor material, which then she left there, and that is a full body of work, and is a full body of works that holds within a moment in time that will never be repeated, because you never repeat a performance, but still is completely precious. And what impresses me is also the use of this kind of material, which is a violet material, because these are mirrors. And besides the anthropological and social meaning of a mirror, in which there is the vanity, there is the reflection, there is some kind of request for an information or a feedback, looking at yourself in the mirror, The mirror is also glass, is also cutting you, is also, and the wood, especially the wood like this, viereckig, is very violent as well as the metal, and you are putting it on your body with the tape, bringing your body, forcing your body to be inside the structure, and then you're living it out, but while in between, in the process, everything is mirrored. And this reminds me, brings me also to this other body of work in which you are also using everyday material. And another important question that I did to Elana when we met was, do you think that what comes out of your performance are relics or are outcomes? Because another thing, and the third thing I thought when we spoke and when I saw her work was about the Venus and Actionismus. So Ermanich, Arnold Breiner, Schwarzkogler, and their way, their research, their urgency, such as your urgency to twist the content, to deliver an idea, to initiate a disturbing act, something that would not make the audience comfortable. Then it's very wide, the discussion about Venism Actionismus, but it was important to me to understand for her, after the disruptive and strong act of performing, what was coming out was a relic, as after a turmoil, as when a ship crashed on the rocks, or was rather an outcome. And she told me that for her is an outcome. And I truly believe that. I can feel that, because the power of the act and the disruptive act is still there. But then the outcome, they are different. And here is also the change compared to the Venus Actionismus. They are different. They are different media. They can be objects. They can be videos. They can be a collection of pieces. And also here, she uses her body in a different way. The body here is acting upon an object, but always in reference with an object. What we spoke about was that in the first, like ironing or burning the first pillow, she was above the pillow, not necessarily touching the pillow, but acting on the object. And then on the second pillow, she was on the pillow, leaving also the marks of her legs. And that's also another reference to the action of the 60s and the 70s, in which the performer was literally doing something, ruining or acting on something. So she was again above the pillow, but in this case sitting on it. And here in the last pillow is her on the side of the pillow, just burning the pillow, but kind of hugging the pillow. So that can be actually, in my eyes, an evolution of her work, but also on her different approach to the work. And I think, yeah, overall these works are mirroring a lot the work of Elana, and are mirroring also her quest for a new signifier and a media to deliver her concept and her thinking. And also what you said about the postcard is very interesting, because there is really a transposition of your thinking, of your idea, from the video to the postcard, and there is a visual shift, where when in the video there is a fragmented part of your body that is being seen, then only in the postcard one can see the whole body. So that's a translation, a development of the work. Yeah. And there is another maturity, another graspability of the work. And yeah, I think it's very important to understand that nowadays the when it comes from a performative act, what is being produced by a performer is not anymore documentation that becomes artwork. It's not anymore documentation that becomes precious and valuable because it's historicized, because we are living in the now. So can be video, can be a body of work, but what needs to be underlined and transmitted is the importance of the thinking. The ephemeral is still there because the act is happened. But when somebody watches a video or holds a body of pieces, these are actually precious.
It happens in a very unique way.
Exactly, they are a precious way in which somebody can hold and understand what has happened once and never anymore, and they speak about her absence, but also about her work, and they are cohesive, as you told me, like you are feeling, you know that it's good for these pieces to be presented together with the documentation. But
yeah, and I want them to continue to have to be exhibited also.
Yes, the big difference is then we can also switch also to this. Yeah, the unique thing of Elana's works, and which is completely different maybe to this multimedia world we are living now in. So because to see a video like this, for example, also an actor can do with red color or with ketchup, and it maybe looks very similar to this work. But Elana's work is very. That's why she also makes the performance just one time. And then we can also, I think, at this moment switch also to a very important question. How it works, for example, in art market. Sometimes when we make now a very intellectual talk, this question could be irritating sometimes, or it could be uncomfortable, But I think it's a very important question to ask how performance art can exist in the contemporary world, like a also commercial piece of art, because it's not so easy to find the definition. I use your words. We talked yesterday about it. I like this cliché. Male, white, American, and painter. And there are some points, and then it works for cell works, for living from works. But it's just a cliché. It's a negative cliché on the end, because it is like it is, and I think it's important. Don't go back to this schema. Like artists, you have to be male, you have to be a good painter, of course good, because when you're not good, so you have to come at a chance. And American, and I think Marek can continue in this direction.
Yeah. It's a little bit strange now.
Yeah, but I think it's very good,
it's
comfortable,
yeah.
But it's very important also for all artists, and
it's important. We had yesterday a kind of preparation for without the introduction of the work and your wonderful historical introduction. And so the market size of something, it's in a way brutal, like these irons, right? So I really felt in the moment, should I have now a monologue about market and how does this work? When you hear, the spirit of Elana and the historical context of it, and how she struggles and that she cuts herself, and she's not an actor who just, cuts into a fake skin,
and make it again,
fake blood, and copy it again and again. We spoke about this as well, about charging up the work, and I would be curious, how many of you are actually knowing Elana's work and have been here to the performance or before? Is this, do you know her? How many do you know her? And the rest, you don't know her work? You have nothing? This is interesting. Because, you know, when I came here to this show the first time, I was a little bit late to the performance and I couldn't enter. And I mean, I could have entered, but I had the dog with me. It was a little bit difficult. But it's, you know, I was seeing her laying there in the corner with this iron and, you know, suffering with this steam and stuff. And I was just thinking, wow, this is, everybody can walk in. You know, it's free of charge. It's a performance that is not repetitive, even if you speak about repetition. Yeah, but it's a unique event where somebody personally exposes herself and then leaves these artifacts. And then I contacted Elana and said, well, if I couldn't enter, it would be great to see you. And she said, yes, I have an appointment with a curator from New York, why don't you join? And so I came here, and this guy was here, and they were talking, and then, Marek, I have postcards to sell. They are numbered, and each one is €20, right? And so I thought, whoa, yes, this is professional artist. This is a profession, right? And so when we speak about art, and when we hear this historical context, and gladly we have a gallerist here who takes care of this, a profession, in my point of view, you can correct me, is when you live from what you are doing. And when you're an amateur, you live from something else and you're doing it for more or less fun, right? So how many artists then are actually professional, right? Who can purely live from their work. So they are pushed and forced into amateurism because they have to do a second job, a third job, and so on. And this is a difficult scenario because, you know, the art market where it evolved from was from beautiful paintings which are done by male artists in their studio, you know, and then put on the nice walls and being sold to wealthy people. And here we are in the midst of Kreuzberg, you know, in Berlin, and there's no artwork, no painting. This is a difficult position to be in, right? So we then started talking about the possibilities of what can she do, and I might ask Martin here, because he's her gallerist, are these works for sale? I mean, we didn't speak about this. Are these artifacts for sale?
Of course they are, Yeah.
And they are unique pieces?
They are unique pieces, yeah.
And what is the price for this one, for example?
You can buy it piece by piece.
This is a mirror?
Yeah, exactly, yeah, it's a mirror.
So you buy each mirror?
Yes, the smaller ones about €150, and the bigger a bit more expensive. The price lists are everywhere here.
Yeah, no, but I'm presenting this.
The scenario, okay.
I know, so this is what make me feel a little bit uncomfortable, because we were speaking here about the intentions, why we do this, and about this historical value of what she's doing.
Of course, yeah.
And now I come and ask, how much is a mirror? And this, you know, this brutal question of how much is it? How do you sell it? This destroys a lot of the preciousness of this artwork. And how do we balance this out, right? How do we make it precious and not, you know, cheap? How do we do it that what she's doing to her body, what she's doing with her life, the expression, how do we turn this into a living? And I think this is a question that is still unanswered in the art world. And we had in preparation a discussion about this, and my point was that the price of art is a social price. So it's the ability of the artists or the gallerists, or both of them, to reach out to very rich people. So this morning I read a short article in the news that it's Damien Hirst has decorated a hotel room in Las Vegas. It's $100,000 a night, dollars. Okay, you could decorate a hotel suite in Las Vegas too, with your beautiful mirrors. And
Pillows.
Yes. So what is actually, right? So why? I mean, how much are the pillows? Can I
pillows or for 1,500?
1,500.
Yeah.
Each pillow.
Each pillow.
This is nothing. I mean, this is compared to a night in this Las Vegas hotel or art from Damien Hirst. So what is the difference, right? So what is and how can we solve this problem? How many artists have the ability or the possibility even to enter these social spheres? And is a social price the right price for an artwork? And does this price then say anything? So does these 150 euros for a mirror, how are they related to you? To the historical context, what you beautifully, how is the 150 euros
What we
related?
said yesterday, you remember we said that sometimes collectors, they don't even have the sensation to buy art if it's too cheap. They really want to have something which is precious. But how we relate it, I think, pushing and letting understand and not damaging or jeopardizing the integrity of the artist or the conceivement of the artwork, but pushing on the preciousness of the moment, on what has happened for this mirror to be created, why this mirror is cut like this or like that, why they have different measurements, why it's not possible for you, it's less beautiful, it's not really right to have one of them, for example, because they are just a piece of the armor she put on herself. They are just a piece of the food.
Yeah, you have to know the whole story.
That's the point. That's the idea through which one can deliver the preciousness of the whole body of work.
Right, so how many mirrors are these?
66.
66
Well,
times 150.
66.
If I want to have this artwork, you know, this, yeah.
66 pieces.
Yeah, so what would be the artworks in total? If I would like to have, I mean, this is easy, this is 4,500. Yeah, and so how many people here in the audience are able to buy this? And this is what I'm thinking, so these postcard Elana sold to me, I could afford this easily, right? So I could say, no problem, Elana, just buy it, right? So everybody of you could afford 20 euros.
Just what you available in the office.
No, and this is 100 times 20, this is 2,000.
Yeah.
For an evening, I don't know how much a musician charges. And I think these things, they are always put away there because we are in the art world, you know, we are connoisseurs, we think about the content, but we don't think about our living and our self-value, our self-esteem, and, you know, that we can live like a normal person. And I think this is something that she put up. She puts on the table right away. I marched in, poof, Marek here. And I think this is a good approach because this, for me, this tells a lot about her seriousness about doing this, right? And then we had this discussion here, and I said, there's a lot of things turning in the art market, in my point of view. In my point of view, we are in a situation, we have been, or not we, but the art world has been 150 years ago, when photography was invented. So before photography was invented, the academic painter, they were, in the end, they were living machines, right? So they were copying something, they were, you know, pushing, with the Renaissance, they had the knowledge about, you know, light and push it against the wall, and then, you know.
And you can see also the fight when the photography was invented, that the painters try to be more perfect, they make it in color, because the first photography was black and white, so the painters try to make it crazy exact, you know, and make it in color, and they fight against the photography, but then exactly, it's a question, and then they have to change the impact.
Yeah, they lost their jobs. In the studios, the photographers went. So the photographers started making photos in Paris. The younger artists went plein air. They took another new invention they used, the train, and drove outside. And then, you know, everything happened as we know. It happened to be that there has been a market evolved about competing styles, like skateboarders say, you know, I can do this move, you can do this move, and the people looked at this, and then this aesthetic more evolved, and it was around these artifacts that the artists created. If it was an art painting, photography, or documentary of a land art piece, or whatever. So the artists, like Elana, created artifacts. I think that we are in a situation right now with social media and the internet that puts the same threat on the traditional art market as photography has done back in the 19th century. Meaning that a certain amateurism comes into place where actually anybody can produce videos, anybody can produce stuff and put it on Instagram.
Cut it immediately on the iPhone.
Yes, we had this whole thing. And so I'm thinking here, when we speak about an artist like Elana, who does work out of her body, out of herself, and she's not mimicking this painting stuff. She's not there and trying to make a beautiful painting. This is already a step in my point of view in the right direction. Yes, and we have to think about what is charging her up. So I would have loved to see that all the fingers go up. This is kind of Valci effect, as I would say.
Yeah.
That you create a hype through, if you want, a stunt. That you do things people get interested in, and that you do the opposite instead of making it rare, making it available, so that lots of people can see it and interact with it. I mean, we had this discussion, and maybe you can reflect on that, because you know that this would come. Or the gallerist, maybe, what do you think? How will you deal with this?
I mean, yeah. Yes, yeah, I mean, you were telling me yesterday about this idea of making like video material actually very readily available, but in different qualities. And this I find interesting, because then it could be something precious of a certain edition. When there's a limited edition, then there's only a certain quality available, and then this one you can have with a special certificate and so forth.
Yeah.
But apart from that, in order to spread the information, to have visibility, to have it in lower qualities, this is kind of interesting. But then about the topic of repeating performances, and also about charging for performances. This is something where I just, for me, what distinguishes performance art from the performing arts is exactly that it goes against, for me it fundamentally must go against these conventions of the performing arts. That there is something repeated, because then it becomes a theater. There's a choreography that is repeated, there's a script that is repeated, there is whatever, something rehearsed, re-performed, and there's a stage, there's a ticket, an audience that buys a ticket, there's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end, there's a clapping at the end, and so forth. Like, it's very important for me that people have the freedom in performances to come and to go, and to interact in different ways, and that they don't buy a ticket. Unfortunately, somehow it's important for me, for the integrity of my work. This is how I feel about it. Even though this is a bit absurd that you pay to buy a drink at the bar, but the artist is for free. It is absurd, but somehow I believe that this is kind of fundamental to the medium.
But also the psychology of the audience changes. In the moment in which somebody pays a ticket, it's because something is being given. There is a show, there is something, they want to be amused because they paid. So your mind works like this. When the audience, the public doesn't pay, it is there in a way more open, doesn't expect necessarily something.
Maybe it's
more open. It's more open to see what is happening, and there is exactly the bridge in which the performing act goes. In a moment in which the walls goes down, the protection goes down, because all right, I'm here, I came to see this performance, maybe I don't really know exactly about what is it. And so there is this sense of like, what will happen? Like, will I be amused? Will I be disturbed? Will I be annoyed by that? And that's
and I'm often aiming to disturb and disrupt, but I think often these days that that does happen with experimental theater, this sort of thing. But it's
This
still,
happens, but it's different.
yeah, there's maybe an expectation of different
Of something,
expectations.
but wouldn't be a solution to reconstruct,
Yeah.
because there has been a fragmentation from when there were the paintings, and then there has been this fragmentation in which then came photography, exactly what you spoke about, and then there is this fragmentation again that is acting through social media, Instagram, and so forth. And how about to reconstruct the preciousness and the importance of the outcomes of a performance by really trying to market, I know you don't like this term, but market it, to market it, as you did with the postcard,
I think
finding different solutions.
Fundamental questions, I think more because we are telling about self-experience and so on and so on. Okay, it's a definition of painting, sculpture is very simple. Everybody knows what
Yeah.
is buying. Very easy. But I think in performance art, it's more about how to bring it to the people, you know?
Exactly.
Because when you bring something to people, then Elana is interesting for the people, with the performances. They can be unique, the performances, but I think the question in performance is not so easy, I think. I don't know nobody who answered this question, like, yeah. And what do you think? I think we talked also yesterday a bit about this, that the important thing is to bring it. You have to have a good documentation. You have to have a good photography.
Yeah.
You have to bring it also to put it in the media.
We spoke about pitching. I call it.
Exactly.
So I had the analogy of Elana being a startup, right? And you, the audience or the collector, being the investors. So what you do, or what is tend to happen these days, is that in the past museums were there to keep the heritage, to collect and preserve. Nowadays we see the eruption nearly of private museums, and the owners of private museums have a different approach. They buy undone artworks, they buy artworks that are not existing. So they invest in the artists, they commission the artists, they give the artist space to work. They don't know what the artist will do. So it's a completely different approach, it's a more dynamic approach. So this is why what I also try to speak here about. One thing is about to preserve the preciousness, to have a kind of site where you have a memory, but it's like it's like a shrine. Ah, yeah, this reminds me of Elana and of her work, of the performance I've been. And the other approach is to say, she's a great woman, she does great stuff, she really delivers for society, it's important that this message is carried out. We fund her, yeah. We fund her that she can do her work. So, and then this is not a problem of being, then we don't even have to think about how much is this, because I think it's embarrassing me asking these questions. I don't really feel well, because it's as you said, put some kind of disgrace to somebody, or when you put a price on something, you have a certain.
So you feel that the performance art in the market should rather be by commissioned works rather than.
It's like, I think we said also yesterday that it would be kind of investing in the stock market. Like, I believe in these artists. There is something there.
Yeah.
So therefore I'm asking a site-specific.
You have to know the artist, you have to know his work, you have to know the artist, you have to know the galleries, you have to know everything. And so it's a kind also very intellectual kind of collective thing.
We come back to the exposure of the artist and to having this director of museums or foundation to commission this work to the artist, so to invest in this title on the stock market. So that there is how the artists, they can reach this point, how they can be asked to do that.
Yeah, we spoke about this when I see, for example, these video productions. Yeah, especially this one in Serbia.
Yeah.
This was probably cheap. I mean, travel costs, sound editing. We had 3 cameramen. Maybe everybody, did it. But you know, normally you have to hire professionals and not
No, I
making.
do all my own fundraising.
See, here we go.
Yes.
Right. So
Exhausting.
what I suggest as a way out is to become not a collector, to become a producer, right? That you come out and say, hey, I would like to make this video in Serbia. What is really, I mean, especially for me as a German, this is our industry and the way to kill people. This is just, wow, nobody speaks about this, and this is a very, 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 very bad story, right? And this is a story that needs to be, it's important that people pick it up and not in a stupid TV production. So you live that, right? You live that. I mean,
It's not documentation.
It's not just from somebody who just does it. It's somebody who lives it. And then the message carries a completely different meaning, right? As you pointed out, this is a real strong message. So when you attach a price to that, this is difficult. But what you could say, hey, well, we would like to produce this video. I need 100,000 euros, and you can have a copy of it, full stop. And then each investor, when they put in, I don't know, 1,000 or 10,000, can pay that for it, and then they can have the original high quality, and the rest will be proliferated on YouTube, wherever. Yeah, so that you can speak out to the world, that everybody who's coming knows you already from your last YouTube stunt in social media. And so I think that we have to, and this would also give the chance, in my point of view, for every student, to participate on Elana's work, because there might be a way that I can, put in 10 euros into a production and be part of it, like having a share of this.
Crowdfunding thing, or
It doesn't need to be crowdfunding. It's not my job. It's his job, right, to set this up. I don't know how he would do it, but you could ask people, students or so, to pitch your project, and you have here somebody on your side who could give the whole story a meaning, and this shouldn't be difficult, in my point of view. This would be my suggestion here.
You're right, because on the end, it's also a new experience for me. I work with Elana 2.5 years together, and I don't have as a performance artist, I'm not a performance art gallery. So I also have to think a lot how to promote her, how to make sittings like here, and because I think that performance art have a big Berechtigung. It's a very important part in the contemporary art in the 60s, 70s. And this time it was also contemporary art, and it had a very big function in the art world. Colette, for example, a great performance artist also, and we can also after make some questions if you like, or discuss together. And that's why I think you cannot ignore performance art just because it's easy to sell paintings and sculptures. Of course, it's easier, or it's much easier. But
but there's also a different value in it. Sorry.
Exactly.
A painting from Bisky or so is beautiful, but in relation to something like that, I mean, this is heavy stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's why I'm interested in this, because I see this important role in performed art, and more and more
okay.
Think about the white horse from Mariana Abramovic, or Mariana Abramovic Ulai, this video where they give themselves, slap themselves for hours. These things are in the public mind, right?
Exactly.
So these are icons. This white horse with the flag, it's an icon.
But it doesn't translate to financially surviving.
Anyways,
that's not what I wanted to say.
Okay,
what I wanted to say is that I would, it happens very naturally, it organically since quite a few years, that from my performances, the objects result from them. I would never, ever conceptualize a performance with that in mind. I don't ever, never, I cannot emphasize that.
Like the last performance, last year you make here was, it was a beautiful performance. It was in this part of the gallery when Elana goes under a bed.
Yeah, it was wood that sort of visually referenced a bed, and Yes, and with this there was not a result. There was not an object resulting from it to be exhibited.
But
and
people remember this performance until today. It's crazy, you know. When they came here, okay, they blocked my Facebook account for 2 weeks because of Elana was. For 25 seconds was standing naked, and I make it on live Facebook, and they blocked my account because of child pornography. You know, I get a letter from them over, you know. A lawyer made these delete all your photos. So it was a good sample why I want to push it.
Yeah, no, but I mean with the works that do result in objects, because that one in particular, I know that it was people found it powerful, you know, but no, it didn't result in something later to be exhibited or potentially sold. But other performances do, and when this happens,
but we have to
it's not any, okay, so we can keep it in mind, but it's not anything premeditated for me. And I feel these objects to be, yes, very precious, as you said, and I would really like them to continue to have a life, to be exhibited, you know, to be a part of the collection. Yes, please.
Why don't you do the performance again? I mean,
because then it becomes a choreography that is repeated. It becomes theatrical. Because for me, there's the immediacy of the need to do it at that moment.
Discussion. Okay.
You know, really, there's an urgency and an immediacy with which I create my work. You know,
but this is planned. The pillows have been planned.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, you have to go to buy the pillows, the irons, right?
Yeah.
You have to pay when you do it, and then in this minute you have this particular feeling.
No, may I ask you mentioned this, Marina Abramovich. This is a question, because she made now a reenactment, yeah?
Yeah.
And this is exactly in the middle of your discussions.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, because she really questions what does it perform, how much cost, yeah?
Yeah.
And Marina Abramovich starts like it's a really radical artist.
Yeah.
What she did now, they start to make reenactment and sell. Yeah.
Yes.
This is how it's performance now. Yeah. And of course, it's your positions. For me, it's more close, you know, because you don't want to repeat. Because if you make repetitions, you're moving to market.
Yeah.
My positions, it's performance artists should be somehow keep it distance with like artist positions and market. If you start to think how much cost mirror, this is for me it's not correct.
It's not the first question. Of course, it's not the first question.
Yeah,
how much?
But in any case, it's, for me somehow, of course, we cannot jumping from market. This is illusions, yeah. But in any case, you have to really keep your positions without thinking about market and how you have to present to sell that.
Yeah, absolutely. But even regardless of market.
That's a very important point.
Yeah, I know.
Special today, because everything's now, you cannot do nothing if you're not thinking how to sell, you know?
Yeah,
many artists, for instance, Vita Konchik, he's cancelled the repetition, the reenactment. I think so Marina Abramovich asked him to make it or something like that. And he cancelled because he says, I did it one time, and this is what belongs to history, and that's all. This is positions. If we will not keep positions like that in art historian, we really to disappear in market.
Yes.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we have to make a living as artists, right?
Yeah, this is another question. You know.
Yeah.
You know, I came from Moscow. Yeah, before Perestroika time. We have no institutions, no galleries, no collectors. Yeah. I'm working in a publishing house, made book design. You know, all my friends, like maybe from Kabakov or another, they make book illustrations. Yeah. And we got money from in other directions. Yeah. And we organized exhibitions, 3-day exhibitions, like I did it now in Berlin, yeah? But in any case, we organized ourselves. This is position of active artists. Now we lost these positions. I'm sure that every artist has to be more active and create something around net. Not only be ask galleries, curators, or professional from market. This diffusion is very bad for artists. I feel it. Artists say no. Then they say more no, That's maybe more clear border between market and contemporary art.
But of course, I think it's changed so quickly. I remember when I visited the first Rundgänge, 15 years, 20 years ago. And I visited some artists, some classes, and when I asked something about the work, they never tell me the price because they don't know. And they just describe me the work, they're talking about the works, and sometimes when somebody wants to have something for 50 euro or for 20 euro, then I remember it until today, they go and buy some boxes of beer and celebrate it. Today the Rundgang in the UDK works like this, that the first what they have is a price list in the second semester. It also shocked me a bit, you know, because I just want to first ask what's going on with this work, what technique is this, or what's the intention, and I see everywhere a price list, or the work. It's changed quite quickly. It's irritating me a bit. You know?
You have to look at the Blue Line, which came in 1917. This is, please look, you understand how you far from contemporary art, you know? And Eric, who is sitting here, Blue Line, yeah, it's Marina Abramovic on the cover with Snake, and you can see how is big gap now between normal art, I would say it's creative art which is possible to compare with art in 50s and 60s, and what happens now. It's not my cup of tea anymore. It's like Kwade, you know, or something like that. I'm not interested even listen or talk because they not speak about works which is cost less than $10 million, you know.
Yeah, but I think in the past it was the same also.
No.
I think guys like Rubens, they're working with 20 of assistants and they pay them. They have to earn to pay them.
So you have to compare, even with galleries. It's never, galleries never get such, you know.
Men talk so much all the time. Sorry for voicing this, but please let Elana say something. Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, thanks. But I think that it really can be coming from the fact that there's such a huge amount of exploitation. And actually, Marek, when you came to buy my postcard, you were speaking about this, the way that even institutions are exploiting art because the artist has the need to produce, has the need to be creative, you know, and that shit is being exploited out of artists because of this. And it's happening also all the time. I mean, artists are working with museums, I mean, places that really do have money and expected to pay for everything themselves. You have to bring in the topic of survival. And Marina Abramovic, I worked with her in 2010. I was one of her re-performers at MoMA in her retrospective, you know, and they wanted to pay us like shit for re-performing her works well, not everybody did every day, but I did every day because I moved there only for this job. During the opening hours of the museum, 6 days per week, until many of the re-performers were losing consciousness and ending up in the hospital. And they realized, this is actually difficult work. And then they changed everything about how they would pay us, you know, because there's so little respect for what is actually done, for what we do as artists. There's no perception and there's so much exploitation. And I'm fucking exhausted of like working as an artist like this. And so, you know, like I don't consider it to be necessarily like if this is happening at UDK, for people to be judged too harshly for it.
I've just mentioned it.
You know, because it really is. It's time for people to wake up and realize the reality.
Yeah, and I also want to put it in a voice for the younger artists today, and even these artists at UDK who come up with the answer to your thing with the price list. It's because we live in a neoliberal time, right? I think back in the days, in the 60s and 70s, I was involved in house squatting, and you know, we've been all kind of together and shared everything back in the days when we squatted here in Kreuzberg. This is different now. When the kids now have to pay, I don't know, 800 euros for a very, very small flat. Everything relates to money these days. So every interaction with others is through money. It's, I think this spirit from the 60s, 70s you're talking about is a little bit lost, and these kids today have to have money to have some kind of freedom. Because it's not that you can have friends that invite you, that you can tramping, like put your finger out. Now you have to pay for everything. Yeah, and so I think that money is these days, because of how society changed, has played a different role, and therefore also forces artists to to acknowledge this fact. Yeah, and to deal with it, in my point of view. And I think you are right with what you were saying. This is the point we all should aim to. But the question is this available for young kids these days? Or I doubt this, to be honest. I think it's.
I also kind of want to say that I'm not from art scene, but from film scene, it's always the same. That if you want to stay true and you kind of say no, but there will always be someone who will betray. So if you don't want to do free project, but there will always be someone who can sacrifice his life for to work with cool artists or something. So it's just because there are so many competitions right now, way too much, that you can stay true, you can still be really focused on art base and not too much on the marketing side, but there will always be someone who just take things from you. And it has, I have a feeling that if we really want to protect ourselves, we need to do solidarity, but also in the end it doesn't work. Because also a lot of us why should I be solidarity with you? I have to pay my own rent, you don't pay my rent. So it's just this kind of very separated world that we live in right now. And I think we just really need to find our own solution. That's my feeling.
A way not to lose integrity, but still place yourself. It's horrible to say, place yourself in the market and live out of it, which is something we were speaking about yesterday, no? When you were telling me that a lot of artists, there is no content behind, there is no work behind, there is no studies behind.
Okay,
it's something important that brings to the production of the work.
Everybody can be an artist today, try to be or try to want to be an artist, maybe like this. And I think also that now we are in different.
No, but I think the important point would be not to lose the integrity.
Yeah, this is
always keeping an eye on what you were saying yesterday. That's not a joke. That's really her body. That's not an actor. That's not something that is being inscenated there to shop just for this and with some ketchup. So without losing the integrity and still sticking to honesty to yourself, but still thinking about ways, as we have a postcard, to go around.
And I have to say that it's the first time that I'm represented by a gallery, and I know that it's a risk for a gallerist to take, actually, to work with a performance artist, because it's not integrated in the art market. And
it's okay.
You forgive me. But I just have to say that I don't feel like anything is compromised. Anything that I do here is compromised, and I wouldn't agree to do it if it would be.
I don't talk so often together.
Exactly.
Before the exhibition, the performance, I don't have so long discussions with other artists. So of course I always have long discussions with my artists, but with Elana it's a special kind of discussions, because very simple, how to make a price for a unique video kind of. It's something for me, but
I feel like
I want to grow with this.
I don't feel like entering the market, I don't know, as you were saying, if I understood correctly, that entering the market is a split from integrity somehow, because I do feel as though if there are collections.
We lost our freedom, I would like to say.
Yeah.
In basis things, artists, especially young people,
Okay, maybe
But
it's
how are you
true.
gonna live if you
Yeah.
don't sell? Honestly.
Yeah.
Sorry?
I mean, how are you gonna live as an artist if you don't sell anything?
Yeah, you can work and find another job.
Yeah, sure. I mean, work 8 hours, then go home, like work for a couple hours, but like, I mean, how the fuck you, I mean, sure. I mean,
It's true. Only
I'm sorry, I don't
I
know.
know a lot of artists they have an extra job to produce their own works, especially when they are young.
Yeah, but imagine a doctor, right? A doctor doing surgery has to have a second job at Burger King or something and then goes and makes a surgery. You don't want that, right?
You know,
Or a lawyer having a different job. You want people to be focused on what they do. So we want you to concentrate on your work. I mean, you have to do lots of research to find about these things. I asked you, where the hell do you find this information from? I mean, this takes a lot of time to do that. And so I think we as a society should think about ways, and you as a gallerist especially should also think about ways, what new ways to adapt to this changing environment.
Exactly, it's all time with the mind of
Yes, and I understand that, and I don't want to go too hard for this, but I think we have to find new ways here. New ways of giving back integrity to the artists, to give them freedom to work, and not letting them have a second or third or fifth job, right?
Yeah, let me say that.
Yeah.
If an artist has not lived, if an artist has not lived, and lived implies all kinds of different things that they can be confronted with in life, then their art is probably not very interesting. There are exceptions.
Yeah.
But life, without life, there is no art. So and most artists, writers, have had horrible jobs, had awful things, and still they've created good work, great work. You don't have to live in a vacuum to be an artist.
I don't have to.
You do have to suffer. In a sense, you do have to suffer, and most of them have.
There are a lot of Korean artists, rich people, all these plein air artists from French, Matisse or whatever, Monet, they were all rich.
Well, I don't know the details, but I mean, I know enough of artists and enough of writers have, taken all kinds of stupid jobs and have gone for years and years and years, and they still did their work.
But I give you truth, it's not, when you have financial success, it don't mean that you are a good artist, okay? So it's completely two different things. I think for be successful, you have to be good, but there are a lot of artists, they are not going this commercial way. For them, they are more important to make museum shows, Kunstvereine, and they are so focused on the works, and they make the works brilliant, and nobody said something different. But I think an artist have to try by himself, also with the help of the gallery, maybe of the government also. That they also have to make more budget. But I think the best way, on the end, the optimum way, is to make this intellectual part, like museum shows, and also the commercial time. You have to have both a bit. I think it's optimum.
How are we forgetting there's an unknown. The unknown is the artists themselves. The artists themselves, they don't even know half the time what's going on. To find out, they begin to create the art. There's this unknown that goes back all the way to violence, childhood, you name it. And no artist will sacrifice that unknown in themselves. No artist, real artist, I don't think, will agree to all this stuff about, prices and all this other stuff. There's that unknown in that person, and that's what's coming out of that is the art, the writing, and that's the integrity. Whether or not they sell or not, or whether or not they have a second job, parking cars, or washing dishes, it's irrelevant. It's really irrelevant. Or whether or not they make it financially irrelevant to that person. Deep down in this unknown part of that person's psyche, it's irrelevant. That's my feeling.
Yeah, but maybe when you want to bring, I don't know.
I think the same. I mean, I think that an artist is an artist, and I think this has nothing to do with your personal wealth. I don't believe in that. personal wealth gives you a certain, comfort, if you want, to certain freedom to do things. But this doesn't change you when you are an artist. I don't think if Elana would be a billionaire, do you think she would stop making art? I don't think so. Would you?
No, absolutely not.
It has nothing to do with...
it's the...
You would keep on going. I mean, what else would you...
there's the need. There's simply the need, but this is what's exploited. Because
from others, I think so too. This is what I'm saying. There's an urgent, as you said, there's a fire burning inside to make art.
Exactly.
Right? And this is what you describe as well. This has nothing to do with how much money you have in your account.
And I think there are also samples whose artists, they have the big careers in the, I think, in the 90s, middle of the 90s, and their career break down because of the crisis. And they have to lose all assistants. I know a lot of artists. They sell the flats, sell the cars, but they continue the art. So I think, kind of respect, or I don't know, respect is the wrong word, but I think when somebody makes art, it doesn't depend with money. There are a lot of people, they have had a lot of money, then the market goes down, and they continue to work. It's a smaller thing, but continue the same.
Buster Keaton. Buster Keaton.
Not a performance artist.
Wait a minute. Sure he was. What, Bill?
I think, for an artist, it's existential to make art, to produce art, to do something, to turn themselves into whatever they do. But I think at the same time, as soon as it's a necessity to exist. It's an existential necessity to make art, but at the same time, it is a necessity to be able to exist in order to follow.
Yes, and I feel also much better when Elana can buy a new Beamer, or something, or can buy a new monitor. I feel better with this, okay? When I saw something from artists, what's the other about it? Then you can buy, I don't know, a new monitor or something, or a guitar. It's super.
What I just want to say is I just don't like to celebrate the necessity of the artist to suffer. I mean, the thing is, the artist
suffering. We celebrate.
The thing is,
I think that is why when we start this thing, it is, it's sometimes, it's important. I think it's an important question, but sometimes it's not so comfortable question, because it's always, we have to discuss it.
Yes, so. More monitors. You feel bad.
If you
we should have left the market away. It would have been a wonderful evening.
I've heard about this. Seriously,
Yes.
I've been around decades, okay?
Yeah.
And if we did,
tell me.
well, I can talk for 2 weeks, you're ready to start? No, I'm not going to talk so much, but one thing I will tell you, every decade I've witnessed, it's so interesting, the changes, and then when you look back, I don't want to say how many decades, and we have a conversation about her show, and the market comes up, this would never happen in the 70s. That's already interesting, and the social media. Not that it's not an issue, but it would never come up when you're trying to figure out what the artist is doing.
I know, and I felt really bad in the road, to be honest.
It's a fantastic group of people to speak about it, actually. A gallerist representing performance artist, a curator and art dealer. And you are like the expert of the statistics of the art market and controlling all of the collections. So it's, it's really like an interesting,
I'm not judging it, I'm just saying it's so interesting how it changes.
Yes.
But
So, what we do? We do number crunching on exhibitions. So we give, with an algorithm like Google PageRank, we assign points to each exhibition, this one for example. Right? It's like an alternative currency if you want. So I see this in a way, and I'm very sorry to say this, that there is a kind of death to connoisseurship and a death to criticism. The criticism is what we do with numbers. The numbers go up the chart or the chart goes down. And this is the modern way of criticizing an art work or an artist's career. This is in the times we are living in. Everything is quantified, right? Every relation between us is quantified.
Which one are the criteria for this number to go up and down?
It's a network. It's a network scenario like Google PageRank. It says how many pages link to a certain site.
Okay.
It's like a quotation index in the science world. How many times is your article quoted as a scientist?
What institutions?
Yes, it's the same thing. Like how many shows did you give? How many times are there? So each show is a quotation, and we measure this, and it gives them a value, right? And this could be, this wouldn't happen in the 70s, 60s. Nobody would have ever think about that.
Everything changes.
But we are living in computerized, digitized time, right? Everything is digital. Every kind of relation is binary. Yeah, and so we have to deal with that. It's a fact. It's like photography back in the days. It's a technology that is overcome
it's important.
and changes the world dramatically. There will be millions of people losing their job. There will be countless artists which have no value because there's zero collectors for this. Yeah, because the people are moving, they sit in the airplanes, they don't collect anymore. When you go up here and visit the lofts of the startup millionaires, you see design furniture, vintage car, no art. No. You don't see art. It's gone. When you ask them, these people, art, look at this is kitsch, yeah, it's not art. Art has content. They don't know. Right, so that we need to, in my point of view, as artists, as art historians, as galleries, connect to the new world, if you will. We need to find a language to communicate with these people. One form is through number crunching, to statistics. It's a way of I'm trying to do that, right? And there are maybe thousands of other forms, but I'm thinking, and this is why Elana probably gladly invited me, we have to take the situation serious. And we have to deal with it. This is all I wanted to say. I didn't want to spoil what she's doing, right? When I asked how much is this, I didn't want to destroy that, but I wanted to just put my finger into the bleeding wound, and sorry.
I like that.
But it's good, right? It's not because I like thinking back in the days how Berlin and how Kreuzberg was. I like to think there has also been bad. Yeah.
It's not only about thinking back. If we say it changes and we have to adapt, we can be sure it's going to change again. So there are certain space for utopian ideas because who knows what's coming next, So
yes, that's why I think also that it's not true, for example, that the past was better and now it's everything shit, I think I think also artists have so many chances with the multimedia today, with the printing versions, It was not possible for somebody 20 years ago to print a book. Yeah. You know what to do. Now when you sit, you write it, put some pictures in, running to Penguin Talk, and you have for €250 a catalog, And I think it helps a lot if you use it or you try to use it. Mm-hmm. Of course, not everything is necessary, maybe, all of us or most of us are on Instagram. It's good for communication. It's very good for communication. But sometimes when we start the discussion, what is the whole art on Instagram is not so interesting.
Yeah, how will you transport on Instagram what's going on here?
Yeah, how will you use this?
There's no way of communicating what Elana does on Instagram, in my point of view. There's an Instagrammable moment in it, of course, here and there, but it's it's not even a tiny reflection. But this is where the artists try to, you try to create Instagrammable. When you speak to architects, right? Architects who build museums, we have to put into account an Instagrammable moment. Fuck that, but this is a reality. Yeah, this is we have to deal with this, I think, in my point of view. This is why I think this art form is a good chance. It's a very good chance because there's no way that you become an Instagram artist, maybe create Instagrammable moments, but this art form by itself is not reproducible in a, like a painting, for example.
Yeah.
The comeback of the aura.
Yeah.
Yeah, the comeback.
Well, there's not one point coming up that, I mean, it's undisputable that we as artists, we are part, important part of society, of how do you say, a democracy even, important part of democracy. Why can it not be that there is a basic income for artists? Because apparently it doesn't work. Free market, the art market doesn't work for most artists, and apparently institutions don't pay enough for exhibitions. Many times they pay.
It's true.
I mean, unprofessional artists are regularly exhibitions. It's very hard to be paid.
We spoke about this, that you are exploited by the museums. Exactly. They say, we give you a show, we give you recognition, you've got to pay for transport, insurance, blah, blah, blah. We even have to hang it.
So there should be there is a minimum wage for artists.
But how should you define who is artist and who is not an artist?
Well, those in France there is a model which is called intermediate spectacle. It mostly works for performing artists when you say that this and this many engagements, performances, etc.
Yeah, but in France, it was 1% of the Bruttosozialprodukt goes directly to the art. You don't have it here in Germany, for example.
Yeah, exactly. And then you get, how do you say, a wage, not a wage.
Can you talk louder? We lost you.
Money and everybody can do something. Maybe you have a lot more artists if you do that. Why do you try to keep up the image of a professional artist? I think in the evening what you see, on the other hand you can say your whole speech was literally for amateurs.
Yeah. No,
if you say,
you go the wrong way.
No, but if you say the art market is destroying everything authentic, everything creative, and so on, then you can say, okay, let those do who do not, as somebody said before, let them do who do not care about it. You say you have to care about it, and you have to produce something new. But I haven't seen real great art coming from internet, digital things.
Yeah, what we're talking about.
And so on. Of course, you can sell it and you can show it. But Instagram, there is no art.
Okay, that's
who knows? That's
why
100 years. Van Gogh here around us.
I think that's quite a ridiculous statement actually, that there's no like actual art on Instagram because you're just like, that's a big statement for a platform that hosts like millions of people with.
Painting is old and you can copy it, and so painting is over. This is not true. Painting is so much in, so that I can even say, Instagram says no art. Painting is not winning.
Yeah, of course, but I mean Instagram is a platform that hosts like video media with filters, but you can represent like, of course the platform itself isn't art.
Ladies and gentlemen,
okay.
So, thank you for viewing. I think thank you so much for that you are coming. I think we have the chance also to make some conversation now, the next 1 hour maybe. You're welcome. You can take some beer or wine, and we stay here. I closed in 1.5 hours.